Hi, my name is Ramin Honary, and I'm here to talk to you today about my clone of Emacs and EmacsLisp that I've written in Scheme so far. So, I am an Emacs enthusiast since 2017, currently employed as a full-stack developer, mostly working with Python and JavaScript, although my true love is functional programming, especially Haskell and Scheme. I started learning Scheme about 2 years ago, and for the past year I've been working on a project that I'm tentatively calling Gypsum. Naming things is hard. It's not a great name. I'm open to suggestions. But yes, this is the project in which I am trying to write Emacs Lisp interpreter in Scheme. There are many clones already of Emacs. You've probably heard of Edwin, Jed, JEdit, Jove, Lem, MG, Yi, Guile. Edwin itself is also written in Scheme, MIT Scheme. These only clone the key bindings of Emacs and not Emacs Lisp itself. The only alternative to GNU Emacs that I'm aware of is Xemacs, which is a fork of GNU Emacs. Most people don't use Emacs for the key bindings. I mean, this is anecdotally speaking, but the people who I've talked to, I would say don't use Emacs for the key bindings. They use it really more because of the power of Emacs Lisp. Emacs is as powerful as any system shell, perhaps even more powerful system shells like Bash. And the reason why it's so powerful is because there's a good programming language which you can use to control everything on your system. You can control processes, you can load and save files, you can create files, you can configure things, you can capture the output of processes in buffers, you can filter text through buffers, and a good programming language is what you need in order to do all of this. So one big goal of this project is to try to stick as closely as possible to the R7RS standard scheme definition. That is the latest scheme standard, R7. And this is just because I want my project to work on many scheme implementations, not just Guile. Although Guile certainly is the reference implementation. So another goal is to be able to run any init.el. So you can take your existing init.el and run it in my program without significant changes. That's one of my goals in the end. I should be able to do that. A lot of people invest significant time in their configs, and it's kind of disruptive if you want to change editors to not be able to use your Emacs Lisp config. And so I think a useful Emacs clone would be able to clone Emacs Lisp well enough that you can run your init.el. And so overall, why am I doing this? That's just because I like the Scheme programming language. I love its simplicity and its power. It's an extremely well thought out language. And it's one of those languages where you can understand the entire language from top to bottom. You can read the entire specification and understand it yourself. It's like the computers I grew up with when I was a kid. They were all very simple computers, like in the late 80s, early 90s. And back then, theoretically, an engineer could understand the entire system at the software level all the way down to the circuit level. You can't do that nowadays. And so nowadays, my computer is not really a physical computer anymore. It's the Scheme language standard itself. That is the core of computation, of all of computation for me. And I would like to use it as more than just an academic curiosity. It was originally designed for teaching at MIT, but it's found use in industry, and the R7RS standard is still relatively new. It's over 10 years old at this point, but hasn't. The Scheme ecosystem itself is already fairly small, and there still, I don't think, has been a whole lot of adoption of R7RS quite yet. Kind of a shame. So I'd like project like this, a very large scale, kind of a killer app like project where you're developing a text editor and perhaps even an integrated development environment in Scheme, I think would be very useful, just even as a study of, what can this language do. And just overall, there seems to be a lot of interest in Guile-based Emacs, and well, maybe a Scheme-based Emacs, but Guile in particular. There has been talk of changing Emacs Lisp, or the core of the Emacs Lisp, over to Guile for about 30 years or so. Talks originally in the early mid-90s, there were discussions between Richard Stallman, Tom Lord, and Aubrey Jaffer. They considered actually replacing Emacs Lisp with Scheme. In 1999, and going for about 10 years, someone named Ken Rayburn actually started a project where he started writing Emacs in Guile. My project is very similar to this. Here's a quote from his webpage, which is still up, even though it hasn't been updated in 15 years. This project that I have started is for converting GNU Emacs to Guile as its programming language. Support for Emacs Lisp will continue to exist, of course, but it may be through translation and/or interpretation. The Lisp engine itself may no longer be the core of the program. And this is my goal as well. In 2010, Andy Wingo and Ludovic Cortez took maintainership of the Guile project. From 2009, so while Andy, 2009 to 2011, the first Emacs Lisp interpreter was already being implemented in Guile. And even to this day, this Emacs Lisp interpreter ships with Guile. And so this was happening while Andy Wingo took control of the project. In 2011, so shortly after Andy Wingo took control of the project, Guile 2.0 was released. And also in 2011, in the summertime, someone named Robin Templeton, I believe it was the Google Summer of Code project, started actually trying to incorporate libguile, that's the Guile interpreter, as a linkable or loadable library, linking it to the Emacs executable, and then providing some built-in functions in Emacs that allows you to call the Emacs, or call the Scheme interpreter, the Guile Scheme interpreter, from Emacs. And so it's not like a wrapper around the REPL like Geyser or Slime. It's actually the whole Emacs, or the whole Scheme interpreter loaded into your Emacs process. And that means your Emacs will have the ability to actually load compiled Scheme programs and actually run them and share memory with Emacs Lisp processes. And well, Robin Templeton will explain all of this. They're presenting today, and I'm very excited to actually see their presentation. They'll explain everything. So, let's see, moving on. 2020, someone named Vasily Schneiderman, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, published an overview called The State of Emacs Lisp on Guile. Let's see if I have that here. Yep, it's this page right here. He goes into detail about who has done what so far and what can you do in Guile with Emacs Lisp so far, and so on. Like, what is the state of the project overall? And so, speak of the devil, Andy Wingo on social media. So, 2020 to present. Guile Emacs is dead. So there's GCC Emacs now. There's Emacs Lisp is now has its own JIT compiler, and it seems like over the past few years, Emacs Lisp has kind of moved off into the direction of becoming its own programming language in its own right, and it is decidedly Common Lisp flavored. It is very similar to Common Lisp, and that seems to be the direction that it's headed now. And I don't know if there's really any interest anymore amongst the Guile or the Emacs maintainers of continuing with a Guile-based Emacs. But as far as I know, there's still a lot of interest in the community amongst Scheme and Lisp and Emacs users who are interested in maybe continuing to try to get Guile to become the core of Emacs, or if not, what Ramin Honary has been doing, at least trying to get Guile something, a language, a first-class supported language in Emacs. So that's enough talking. Let me just show you what I have so far. The GUI is barely working because I have very little experience with GTK or G-object introspection. It's very difficult to debug, so it's very slow to develop. Any crash at sea level produces no stack traces. So far, most of the crashes that I've experienced are due to simple mistakes, like passing the wrong data type. So far, not a whole lot of need for GDB or rebuilding all of GTK, glib, and so on with the debugging symbols. But yes, still development's been very slow. I'm learning as I go. I've chosen to use Guile GI as the foundation for the GUI. Let me just load it up quick here. Load main Guile scheme. And this will launch the GUI. I also happen to have a REPL that runs in a separate thread and submits any form that you type to be evaluated inside of the running GUI environment. But you can just type stuff. So hello world. And of course there's, as you can see, it's not quite rendering correctly. This messages thing here. That should be over here, obviously. I haven't been able to figure out how to get those little details down. But yeah, you can do Alt:, and you get your eval, and you can just evaluate, like, what's an Emacs, or what's a scheme-specific thing. Like, import surfy1, and let's see, do iota 20, for example. And so that is the procedure that iterates and produces some 20 elements of a list. Or you can do something like, let's see, string append hello with space world. And you get the result and so on. And Scheme allows you to return multiple values, so what I have done here is just every value is captured in a list, and it prints all of the return values in a list. So if a procedure returns no values, you get an empty list. And that's that. It's still quite buggy, so if here's a bug that I can reproduce fairly consistently. I can if you do, there seems to be a problem with a widget being freed too soon, so it will crash. I'm going to try and solve that, hopefully, before this presentation goes live. Let's see here. The EmacsLisp parser is based on Guile EmacsLisp, so the Guile EmacsLisp interpreter that ships with Guile, that is what I am using. I've actually copied and pasted the source code from the Guile source base into my own project so that I can iterate on it more quickly. And I've already had to make some modifications to the EmacsLisp interpreter in Guile. So here's the evaluator. I've actually already modified the parser and the lexer a little bit, and it's at least able to parse all of the subr.el program, the EmacsLisp program. It can actually load that but not evaluate it, or parse it but not evaluate it. Read, not eval. By the time this goes live, I will have submitted a patch upstream. And That's another goal of this project, incidentally, is that anything that we can contribute to Guile and any built-in functions that we can implement, I would like to, for this project, I would like to try and contribute upstream to Guile. The Emacs Lisp interpreter is not working well, unfortunately. So this is the copy of the code base from this commit in particular. Well, I can't get it working. I can't actually get the non-copy, the actual built-in version of the Emacs Lisp interpreter to work properly quite yet. So let me quick go to, what is this here? Guile ELisp. So suppose you have this eval ELisp procedure here, and it takes an ELisp environment, and then it evaluates an expression in that environment and evaluates to a value. So this is the standard way of doing it in Guile. If you can see here, you've got this expression, compile expression. This is like eval. And so actually trying to load this, so let's do load, Gypsum, let's see here, this is, no, I want to import Gypsum backend Guile ELisp. And if I actually want to do this, so ELisp eval, first of all, it says it failed because there's an unbound variable ELisp eval. Don't know what it's talking about. There's no such variable in any of my programs. I have no idea what's going on here. You can try to run eval ELisp on some simple form like +1 2, and it gives you this exception. This works. This is the same issue that I have with all of the every version of the Emacs Lisp interpreter in Guile. I can get it to work with this big L mode, so I can actually do +1 and 2 here. I can do print like to here. That all works fine. It gives me, for some reason, a stack trace here. And yeah, so it's a bit, it's not well documented. The code base is fairly old. As I said, it was developed around 2011, and it's fairly opaque, and I have not been able to figure out how to get Emacs Lisp in Guile working smoothly. So I have started writing my own Emacs Lisp interpreter, and Gypsum ELisp eval tests.scheme. It's not entirely ready. I can show you some of the tests at least. Here is a simple Emacs Lisp program that you can evaluate. You got prog n, set q a to 3, set q b to 5, set q c to the sum of a and b, return c. And this at least works correctly. As you can see here, the result is 8. But the let star semantics are not completed yet. Lots of work left to do there. Yeah. So, in the time I have left, I guess I can just talk a little bit about what my plans are for the future. So I would like to begin by evaluating, or actually loading the subr.el into my Emacs Lisp interpreter. I actually have tests set up for that as well, so I can actually select any form I want from subr.el, and I can just run this through my interpreter and test to see if everything is working once I get that far. Yeah, let me just say that this is my formal appeal to the community for help on this project. Emacs Lisp has 1,393 built-in functions. I could never implement that many functions on my own, so if this project is going to be useful to anybody in any reasonable amount of time, I'm going to need help. And I know that there are people out there who are very interested in a Guile-based Emacs, and so if you're watching this, please feel free to contact me on social media or over email. My job, the way I see it, is if there's enough interest, and I do get a lot of people interested in starting to contribute, my job will be to document the building and testing process and make sure that it is as easy as possible to contribute code to this project. I want to document the system architecture. I'll write blog posts. I'll do videos on PeerTube explaining how everything works. And I will prioritize which built-in functions I think are probably going to be the most necessary, the most essential to get the interpreter running, and then find low-hanging fruit functions that are easy for people to implement as a good introduction to getting them started on contributing to the project. And then, of course, I will take responsibility myself of making sure that we can get the ELisp interpreter to the point where it can run the Emacs regression tests. And these are the test suites that are used to test Emacs Lisp itself in the GNU Emacs code base. And so ERT is itself written in Emacs Lisp, and so I think if we implement enough of the built-in functions to be able to run ERT, then we can actually start using the GNU Emacs regression tests to test our own interpreter, our own Emacs clone. And of course, I'll make sure that there's at least one usable GUI. I'm currently working on Guile GI and GTK. It would be great to have a curses-based, an ANSI terminal-based, something that works in your terminal emulator. And yeah, it would be great if someday soon, hopefully, we get enough done that you can actually contribute a patch to this project from within the Gypsum editor itself. I was going to do an overview, but that would be for more of an hour-long presentation. So I'm out of time. I guess the last thing I should quickly say is there's no meta-object protocol in this project. I think that's a little bit too difficult to port to various scheme implementations. So I've created a substitute, which I'm calling functional lenses, which is inspired by the Haskell project of the same name. Everything in this project is based on functional lenses. Yeah, I also went a lot of work into the Emacs data structure. The point being that I think I have a pretty good foundation here upon which we can build, even though there isn't a lot done in the actual prototype itself, not yet anyway. But I made sure to get the fundamentals down from the beginning, and so I think we have something, a solid foundation on which to build. So I'm going to conclude it there, and here's my contact details. Like I said, this is a project I'm appealing to the community of all people who are interested in Guile and Emacs to help contribute to this project. I see myself as just getting the ball rolling again, taking off from the work that Ken Rayburn left behind with my own, from the ground up implementation, though. So yeah, contact me, email. You can take a look at my blog where I talk about what I have done. My source code, the code for this project, is up on Codeberg. And the presentation, the homepage for this presentation, you can find more details there. And yeah, I'm on ActivityPub as well. So my handle is RaminHal9001 at fe.disroot.org, and I'm on every day. So yeah, please feel free to contact me if you're interested, and thank you for your attention.